In this video, we are going to talk about some aggregate functions. They are the lifeline of data analysis, and we will discuss some functions in Excel that help in aggregation tremendously. Aggregate functions takes a range of values as input and return a single value as output. For example, what's the sum of products that were sold today? What is the costliest item that we have in our inventory? And many more such questions can be answered by aggregate functions. Let's start with count function. It gives the count of cells in a range that contains number, which is why it is able to count the number of records in salary, but it is not able to count the records in name. If we want to count the text records which are not blank, we can use count A. Remember, count A does not include the blank records, which is why we got 8. If we want to count just the blank records in a range, we can use the count blank function. It returned 2 since we have 2 blanks in this range. We can get the maximum value from this range using the max function and minimum using the min function. Again, these functions are taking a range of values as input and then giving a single value as output. Let's focus on the conditional aggregation functions, which are really powerful and helpful for data analysis. We will start with COUNTIF. COUNTIF counts the number of cells within a range that meets a certain condition. If we rephrase that, COUNTIF filters the row of a column on the basis of a value and then it returns the count of filtered data. Let's see this with an example. So we have 1000 rows in product column and you want to check the count of transactions that happened for product 3. So we can use COUNTIF function for that. The first parameter is the range, which is our product column, and the criteria is product 3. This is giving us the output as 202. So COUNTIF basically is similar to our filter. If we press Ctrl Shift L and then we click on product name filter, select the product 3, and finally when we click on the top, it is showing the count as 203, 202 numerical records and one header. Similar to this, we can go ahead and calculate number of rows we had for north region. We select the region column as range and the criteria will be north. Average if function calculates the average for the cells that meets a certain condition. For example, if we want to calculate the average sales in north region, we can use average if function. The first two parameters are similar to COUNTIF, the range and the criteria. So these two parameters filters the rows that satisfies the criteria, and the final parameter is the amount for which we want to calculate the average. Let's look at these two steps manually. We use Ctrl Shift L to filter our data. Have I told you how much I love this shortcut? Then we select data for only north region and we click on the top of amount, and here you see the same average we calculated using average if. The next is SUMIF, which is similar to average if. The only difference is that instead of calculating average, it will calculate sum. Here we see the sum as 13206, which is what we should see when we use SUMIF. So again, region is the first parameter, the criteria is north, and the amount will be our sum range. And finally, we got the expected output. The count ifs, average ifs, and sum ifs are extension of COUNTIF, average if, and SUMIF functions. These functions allowed only one filter criteria, but what if we want to count records with product 3 that was sold in the north region by the employer Ron? This involves multiple filters on multiple columns. We can apply filter on multiple columns in Excel for aggregation using these if-else formulas. Let's see this with COUNT-IF-else. The first criteria range is the product name. The criteria is product 3. The second criteria range is region, and the criteria or filter for that is north. The third criteria range is employee, and the filter for that is Ron. When we apply this in our COUNT-IF-else formula, we get the result 10. We can verify this by applying the filters on our 3 columns. We again press Ctrl Shift L, and then we will apply filters one by one to all the 3 columns. And now if you see here at the bottom, you will see the numerical count as 10, which is what we got from the formula. When we apply average IFS using the same criteria, we should get 51.7. The sum for the same criteria should be 517. The maximum value would be 100 and the minimum value would be 17. Let's verify all this with our average ifs, sum ifs, max ifs and min ifs function. For average ifs, the first parameter is the average range. Remember, for average if, it was the last parameter. So we will specify amount as the first parameter, and then it's the same. Our first criteria range is product name. Then we have product 3 as the criteria, region as the second range, north as the criteria, employee as the third range, and Ron as criteria. We just made everything absolute so that we can just copy paste this while calculating for sum, max and min. We got the value 51.7, which is what we saw earlier when we did the filters manually. Now we just copy it to the next row, change average ifs to sum ifs, and it is giving us the sum as 517, which is what we saw earlier. I'm copying it to save time. You would want to do it yourself by writing everything again so that you get a better hang of the formulas. Now copy sum ifs to the next row, change it to max ifs, and we get the value 100, which is what we saw earlier. When we compute min ifs, we should see 17, which is the case. So if we want to filter on a single column or on the basis of a single condition, we use if, and if we want to filter on the basis of multiple conditions, we use ifs. Both these methods of manually filtering data and using these functions are really helpful. If you are working with data, you will be working on these functions very often. At the end of this section, I will drop some questions related to sum if, sum ifs, average ifs, so that you get a proper understanding of these formulas.